Okay. West Salem Redevelopment Advisory Board, February 2nd, 2021.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining in today. It looks like we have a pretty good group today as far as attendance. And with that, Therese, can we do the opening call, please?
Yes, Jeff Miller.
Here.
Brandon Fullman.
Here.
Kathy Goss. Not present. John Hannum.
Present.
Tyler Jackson. Not present. Mark May.
Here.
Samantha Ross.
Here.
Brittany Davidson Cruikshank.
Here.
Chris Wilhelm. Not present. Michael Ryan.
Here.
Great, thank you. Next up, we have the agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review it? Any additions, deletions, etc.? If
Really
not,
quickly, Jeff, on 5E, it lists for the next meeting, it's February. My apologies. It's supposed to be March. For the next meeting topics, 5E.
got it. Do we need to take action on that, or I mean, it seemed like we would need to. Mark,
Well, I guess you could just say, because you're going to approve the agenda anyway, you could just say as amended or with the changes to 5E or something like that.
Mark, you were saying something, but you were muted.
Yeah, I move that we accept the agenda as presented with the small modification on 5E to change it to March.
I'll second that.
With a second from both Brandon and John. Any discussion? Perfect. All in favor, either raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Moving on. Thank you for pointing that out, Tori. Minutes from last month. Everyone have an opportunity to read through those, review them, make sure that they were accurate. If so,
I'll make a motion to approve the February minutes.
thank you.
Second.
Second by Michael. Thank you, Michael. Any other discussion? Perfect. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Didn't think there would be. We have no action items. So with that, we're going to get right into section 5 of the agenda, 5A, which is the discussion for fiscal year 21-22 budget. So with that, Tori, will you please jump in?
Sure. So I sent out support materials, so hopefully you got that yesterday. Basically what I did is I outlined some of the background. So as far as the urban renewal area, we're constrained geographically, and we have specific goals, objectives, projects in our urban renewal plan. I included that as just some of the support material. But I have here, I can share my screen. So as far as the budget, what we're going to do today is do a high level discussion. If you want, you can get into the detail, but we'll have our financial officer next month. As far as the fiscal year goes, the city operates on a fiscal year from June to July. It's not on a calendar schedule. So that's why it's always, like in this case, 21-22. So it carries over. So in preparation for that, we're going through the capital improvement plans for public works projects, and we're getting everything ready for the budget preparation. So all that will be presented to, if you participate at the city council level, there's a budget committee. It's public, they're public meetings. So if you want to participate, you can join in, provide comment. I'm not sure if anyone's participated before, but you can also, when there are openings on the budget committee as a member of the community, apply to be included in the budget committee. So with that here, I'll share my screen here. Okay. So basically on what we have on page 1 is just the text outline. Again, some of the background. The plan was established in 2001. The urban renewal area was established in 2001. So we've been working toward completing various projects. We've completed work at Wallace Marine Park. We've completed a section of 2nd Street. And we've done wayfinding, edgewater improvements. There have been a lot of different projects over the years. As those were completed and paid for, we completed also an action plan that basically was like a market analysis. So it took into context the projects that we had completed and reviewed what the various needs were within the market of West Salem, and then provided some recommendations. And so that's something else. Again, it has to be aligned with the renewal plan. So out of that came some additional recommendations. So like item 1 that we have, 2nd Street improvement. I'll see if I can share my map screen. Everyone remember the discussion around 2nd Street? So we've worked on the section of 2nd Street from Rosemont over to Girth. That's all been improved. Now we're having a new section that we're working on that's basically working from east to west. The Wallace Road section from Wallace Road through where there isn't a 2nd Street. That would be through to Patterson, and then continuing all the way to where we had completed that improvement to Girth Avenue. So that's what this new phase of 2nd Street is. And along those lines, we've done, I'll bring up this, the spreadsheet kind of helps break it down. So in the first column references the planned projects from the urban renewal plan. So park improvements, streets and sidewalks, streetscape, bike pedestrian, public parks, property acquisition. So those are things within the urban renewal plan that we can work on. And so in the action plan that was completed 2015 roughly, we have zoning cleanup that's already been completed. That's where we had a lot of different mixed zones all throughout parts of our West Salem urban renewal area. And so this was an effort to remove overlay zones that were confusing, and really just get bigger areas under the same zoning designation. And what that means too is we have a lot of conversation about our Salem changes to the comprehensive plan. With the change of the zone, if there are existing businesses, like there are sections of industrial areas, those businesses can continue. There's this continued use provision in the code. Jess mentioned this before, that if someone came in and they wanted to keep operating in that sense, expand if there were damage to a building, rebuilding and doing that same use, all those things continue. Really what it's looking at is if there are opportunities, which we have seen some interest in redevelopment through the West Salem urban renewal area, that obstacles removed. If you have like just industrial designation, you keep doing that industrial designation. In this case, if you happen to have now a change to a mixed use, you could either do commercial, retail, or a mix of offices, residential. If there's really, it is preparing for that market interest that we anticipate in the near future. So that's completed. 2nd Street then carries off of that. So like the Edgewater corridor, that's all Edgewater, 2nd Street mixed use corridor. And so 2nd Street is that other piece of it. So as we look at the design of 2nd Street, we're not just looking at just putting a road down. We'll have some additional streetscape elements, and that's something now that we have an engineering firm identified, Century West. They're going to be starting to do the survey work. So as they get more of an understanding of what the design will look like, they'll start meeting with the public. So they'll come to the advisory board and different meetings just to get that additional feedback. Because what we want to do is incorporate, to the extent possible, some Edgewater type elements. We've heard in the board conversations with this group that most of the community appreciate going down Edgewater, that Main Street feel, especially during certain parts of the year, seasonal parts like over the Christmas holidays where you can have decor. So we want to have similar lights with the support structures that can hold those things up. There's also been talk within the action plan to have, and we've had Thursday markets when, pre-COVID. So we want to see what we can do to incorporate some elements to festival streets is what was referenced, but it's just really places for people to congregate, approaches to be able to shut down parts of the street when you don't have vehicular traffic, and be able to have like a mingling space. So we'll have more of that as we get into the design, and it'll definitely include you guys just to get feedback from you. So you'll hear a lot about 2nd Street. We've done a lot of different type of studies around 2nd Street, like the extension of it over to the east side. But right now we're just looking at the west section from Wallace to Girth. And I can bring up a map here, but let me go through these different projects. So also, again, the far left column is urban renewal plan. The middle one is referencing the recommendations from the action plan. So we have the zoning, the 2nd Street, and the others just miscellaneous things outside of like the big projects that we can set aside funds for. And some of this could be captured too within the 2nd Street design. And then what we have in the third column is the proposed fiscal year budget 2021 to 2022. So the recommendation is to allocate an additional $2 million to the 2nd Street project and fund the grant program $900,000. And I can talk about that in a second. That's the next topic, is to do an update on the grant. But I'll leave it there for right now. So what I included in the document too is just the support materials. I didn't give the whole urban renewal plan. If you want to go through that, it's on the website, or I'm happy to send you the link or the attachment, the document. What I did is I referenced the projects in the plan. So that was what that supporting documentation was. Any questions? Comments?
I have a quick question. Was there someone else that was wanting to ask a question? Samantha? You're unmuted. I didn't know. Okay. Specifically on the $2 million, maybe I missed it. Maybe you kind of were touching on it, but what is that $2 million going towards for 2nd Street in that third column?
So on this page on item 1, so we have the total cost. So we have roughly $1 million to design, and we're designing the whole stretch. But then we're doing the construction piece in phases. Let me see, I think I have it. So if you can see this, so phase 1, it includes the design, but it includes constructing from Wallace to Patterson. And then the last phase is Patterson to Girth. This is the main section where there isn't a roadway at all. So it's really having the funding in place to complete design and complete construction of phase 1. So that's what that additional amount is.
Okay.
So we'll have, I think I detailed it in item 1. So actually, let me see.
Yeah, I got it, Tori. We can move
Okay.
forward.
So it's really just making sure that we have the funding in place now that we have the engineering contractor to do the design. We want to be able to move from design to construction, at least of that phase 1 section, as soon as possible. So that's just making sure we have the funding in place for that.
I guess I would say thanks for providing this, Tori. The context here for everything that we're doing, I think, is incredibly helpful. And I'd like to see these sorts of documents referred to frequently throughout the year as we go forward. It really
Sure.
does help, I think, this group just understand where we're at, and the little things that we're doing every month really do fit into part of a bigger plan that's been in place for quite some time.
Yeah, I will say, there have been a lot of projects. The zoning project in and of itself was not an easy feat. It took a lot for the community to understand, a lot of just process to get it through. And then the grant program too. So as far as funding grant programs, we've had a good range of different projects. I'll speak to that in a second, but I just want to, if there's anybody else have any questions as far as what you'll see this next month. So right now, I just wanted to talk at a high level of, where we anticipate making the recommendation for the funding for the next fiscal year. And then you'll see a little bit more detail next month. Okay. I'll move on to the next part. So really quickly on the grant program, the way that was structured, and I'll speak to it as far as the evolution of it. Around the time that the urban renewal area was created, downtown had what was referred to as a toolbox program. And a lot of it, and what you'll see in various communities throughout the state, they all kind of evolve. I live in Dallas now. I lived in Salem for years, and they're going through the same thing where it's little businesses in downtown, in this case, the West Salem downtown area, would come in on a regular basis and apply for, a new window or a sign or a new paint. And so the conversation around 2014 was we should maybe consider increasing the amount of grant funding in an effort to provide an incentive for redevelopment projects. So adding to that property tax base. By state law, property taxes can only grow at a certain rate per year unless you do a significant investment. Like if you build a new building or if you build a new expansion of a building, heavy equipment, in this case, we have industrial areas, all these add to the tax base. So that was the basis for moving from a roughly $10,000 to $20,000 paint type of a grant to something that could really encourage and their conversations, like when the market's right, these redevelopment projects are going to happen anyway. So what this does is we shifted from a $20,000 small toolbox grant to up to a $300,000 grant potentially. And what it does is just tries to get those projects to happen sooner as an incentive. Businesses, in this case, industrial businesses or businesses that are in the looking to redevelop, acquire property and build new buildings. They're looking at the area in general because there's a lot of people, pretty good income in West Salem. So over time, the market will shift to where that just happens on its own. So what the intent of the grant is to make that happen sooner so that we can realize the property tax benefits and do more projects in the urban renewal area. So that was the basis really for this shift in 2014. So since then, we average about 3 grants per year, and I detailed that in the document that I sent out. Actually, I'm going to go to that because I'll come back to this part. Sorry for the. So basically what we're doing is, so we have about 3 grants per year, fiscal year. In this case, we'll look at 20 to 21. And the average grant amount's $138,000. So it can go up to $300,000. And I'll bring up the previous sheet and I'll show you where we have had, I think we've had probably 2 that have utilized the full amount. But for the most part, they're basically roughly half the amount, the maximum amount for most of the projects that we get. So what we've had in this recommendation that I'm making is for $900,000 is because we've had 2 years where it was, we only had to recapitalize. The intent is to try to have, if you could have a maximum project that maximizes the grant amount of $300,000, just maintaining those 3 projects over the fiscal year. So that's what the recommendation is. So we've only been maintaining that $900,000, and over the time we've utilized those funds. So that's where we're anticipating in this case. Right now we have $200,000 that could carry over, but we have 2 different companies that we're engaged in as they prepare grant applications that could utilize that full amount. So if those don't go through, we'll just have more funds to carry over. But we would need $700,000 instead of $900,000. But I'm anticipating that, given that we have 2 applicants, at least one of them will go through, and it seems like it's a significant project that could utilize that full $200,000 amount by July, which is when, or end of June is when our fiscal year ends. So I just want to make sure that as we have this budget conversation, we have the money to continue those projects in the next 2021, 2022. So this shows a quick breakdown, 2016 to 2021. The addresses, the type of project. Majority of the projects we've seen are new construction, new buildings. We've had a few that are building expansions. It would still be considered new construction. Also, there'd be the expansion that was in August 2016, number 2. But other than that, majority have been new construction. We have had manufacturers come in with new equipment. And what you'll see too is we've had the 2 manufacturers that applied for equipment have applied twice. So to clarify that, it's not a recurring where they're coming in for the same project. In one case with West Salem Machinery, they wanted to, and I was trying to get them to do it all together. So they were doing an automated mill station along with an automated paint station. But the paint station wasn't in a place where they had to do additional permitting through the city. So we've had to separate that out. So that would have been one application, but given the amount of different permitting they needed to get for the paint station they're planning on, had to separate that out. And so that's a new application that's going through the process now. And then for Truett Brothers, 2 separate projects. One was expanding their office to pull their offices from North Downtown Salem to West Salem. And then they're also looking at a production line. So they're looking at equipment to support a production line. So totally different projects in that aspect as well. So again, mostly new construction. We've had, we've had only 2 projects that utilize the full 300. One was south, the point at Glen Creek, the new buildings they put there. And then the other one was the Studer property, the rehab, the physical fitness facility was put off of Patterson. And that's what I have. Any questions on the grant program? I wanted to give a little bit of context just to show how it transitions and what the intent is. Oh, I will say too, before I turn it over, is it's a matching grant. So it's set up as an 80% private funding to 20% grant. So we only do the 20% of the eligible project for the grant program. And that's it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions for Tori on that? It's a good thing to reference, kind of go back to Mark's initial comments for the other information that you provide. I think this is pretty interesting as well, because there again, I think sometimes we get working through the minutia of just trying to move this thing along, and we forget that there's this money that's going out to these people and that sort of thing. At least I do. So thank you.
Yeah, it's nice. So in the budget that I referenced for the urban renewal plan, the financial programs is one of the allowed projects. Obviously, that's why we're doing it, but also acquisition. And we have done a lot of acquisitions throughout various parts of the city, and we could do it here too, but it's one of those where the preference has been to provide this incentive grant program rather than the urban renewal agency saying, you know, we want to target basically a lot of funding to one property. So in this case, it goes to the market, goes to the people who are conducting business and building, expanding West Salem, and says, you know, we'll work with you to get that property, you know, further investment in that property. So you don't have, you know, what you could see otherwise is, you know, an industrial user that just finds a new space, let's say Mill Creek or something, and just vacates that property and it sits there. So the more that we can do to engage that business, either expand here or, you know, in the case of maybe transitioning from industrial use to, you know, something different, it just helps avoid that blighted period where it's not engaged.
Hey, Corey, I have a quick comment or question too, if you could field. Just looking through the different projects, it looks like they're dating back to 2016. And it looks like we have anywhere from 2 to 4 projects annually. Is there something we should be doing as a board from a communication standpoint to increase participation in the grant program? Or are we kind of at a place where we're kind of meeting the threshold and doing what we need to be doing?
So it is popular. We, as soon as there's a new project in the area, we get notifications through the city. I do to attend the pre-application meeting. So I'll usually go to as many of those. Usually when it's West Salem related, I just like to get firsthand information. Usually in a pre-application meeting, those are confidential. Once they move past that conceptual discussion to permitting, then it's public. So I have noticed that as I've gone to these pre-application meetings that people are aware of it. If they're not, then I'll share the information with them. But we are getting, good traffic, people using the program. I would say, it's always good to have the, people communicating. So if you have chances, I know with Sam's group, the business association, I participate in that too. So, and occasionally I'll present, so I'll share with that group, neighborhood associations, others. We have our website. I'm happy to provide links and information to you if you see opportunities, share it with various groups that you're involved in. I think the more people know about it, the better.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Tori, I've just got one more question. I apologize. Just going through math on the last two, the most recent ones.
Yep.
I thought we were, for clarity and full disclosure, I thought we were providing 4 to 1, so 25%. You clarified that it's not, that it's basically 120.
Yeah.
20. So when I do the math, like just on the last one as an example, the 624,780 that's eligible, that number it comes out lower than the 134,000 by about 10 grand. And
yeah. So we have a contingency of 10,000 that we roll into. So there's the 20% that we incorporate a contingency part. And I will say that new construction there, they already have an increased cost. And so we went back and forth. She was asking, given material costs have been all over the place, anyone that's involved in construction. So they came back saying that we started talking early and they're getting all the permits now. Now they did an updated cost estimate and they're 70,000. And so they were seeing if they should amend their grant agreement. 20% of that was about 14,000 or so. So I just suggested, we just use the contingency. So that's what that is. Sorry for the long explanation, but it's the 10,000 of contingency that we have in projects.
So is it 10,000 or 10%? I've heard
10,000.
So it's just a flat $10,000 contingency.
Just flat 10,000. Yeah. So their cost overruns, then we can offset those costs
up to 10,000 if it's reapplied or negotiated or whatever.
No. So they just have to submit. So they'll have approval. That's what that grant amount is approval of. And I will say that's of eligible costs. So their total project costs are in kind of the center column.
Yeah.
So they're, this is upward of $1 million. So
sure.
What eligible costs means is they do a lot of site prep and they'll have a lot of permitting. So we only do about $10,000 of the soft costs for permitting. Mostly we want to gear the grant funds to the actual project costs. And so in this case, it's the building. We're not funding demolition. We're not funding landscaping, parking. We want to, really what we're trying to do is target grant funds to the taxable piece. So the building part. Now they'll look at it as, I have a total project cost, in this case, $1 million. And then we're coming in with roughly, close to, I guess, 135,000 to help with that total project. But
understood. Thank you for the explanation, Brandon or Samantha.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. You can go, Sam.
I had a question in regard. So just a general, what is timeline? So I'm a business owner here in West Salem. I apply for a grant. It's not too complicated. What is timeline from application to getting approved?
Sure. I will say, given the amount of information that's out there now, we'll hear which is preferred. So in the case of this new project we're working on for 570 Patterson, we've been talking for a year probably. And it's been an interesting ride. Like I thought that they were going to go away with COVID and just kind of ride that out. But you know, they're just moving forward. And so I will say that doesn't mean that that's how long it takes to turn around. I will say that it's just nice to have that conversation. Like they came to us saying, you know, we were aware of a grant program. What is it? How does it work? And so then we can be part of that conversation and help them, you know, especially if it's a new business or a new developer going through the city pre-application and permitting process. So we're there the whole time just to, you know, track the project, direct them to the people they need to talk to. And then when it gets to the actual application part, what we're finding is the majority of these businesses, they have a commercial loan. So it's not really that different, Sam, you know, your world. They were going into, you know, a bank representative and they have to get like their real estate estimates, they, you know, their project cost budget all together. They basically put a package together. They also submit to us that we utilize for our information to frame our grant around as far as the budget and everything. So we work really close with, so the real estate broker, commercial lender, applicant, utilize that same material to approve the amount of grant funds. So as far as like, we've really gotten busy now with this 570 Patterson because I think they probably started construction last week. So now we have to get like our City of Salem sign mounted on the fence. You'll see our blue signs around as we're doing the projects. So really we'll go back and forth on what the eligible project costs are. Our director will issue a grant commitment. And really when we get into that part, I would say, you know, we're within like days, weeks to maybe a month or two, depending on what the exchange is as far as back and forth for application material. But it really is pretty fast. I would say from the time that we actually get a complete application to funding a project, you know, it's probably over a few months. You know, when they start doing project construction, they submit to us a paid invoice, and then we issue disbursement of grant funds based on reimbursement. We want to see progress on a project. We're not going to front a project. We want to pay it as it's completed, and we hold on to a retainer. So as they build the project, we're trying to get the disbursement to them because they're having to pay contractors on a monthly basis. So we'll get a disbursement to them within a couple of weeks to a month so they can meet their contractual obligations for payment. And then our retainers held on to until there's a certificate of occupancy issued. So that means that they met all their city permits, and then we release the remaining grant funds. So once we get a project going, you know, we're talking back and forth. They'll submit, you know, we'll issue funds on, you know, every 2 weeks on a monthly basis until the project is complete.
Nice.
That was a long explanation, but it's really, I didn't want to mislead you to think that it's, you know, a year process or a year-long process. It's much shorter once the project actually materializes. There's just a lot of upfront effort to get it through the permitting process.
Thanks, Tori.
Any other questions for Tori on this? No, looks okay. All right, Tori, well, thank you for that.
Okay.
I guess we're moving on to
The calendar.
Calendar 5C there.
Yep. Okay, so I should have probably shared this last month. We don't typically have a January meeting. So as I mentioned, we operate on a fiscal year as far as our budget is concerned. But for calendar year, I just typically share in the first meeting of the calendar year what we can anticipate meeting wise. So that's what this is. I guess it kind of helps because now we're talking about additional funding for new projects. So it kind of fits within the timing. So we've had our January 6th meeting, obviously, and today, February 3rd. So these are the dates that we have for our meetings. Again, the references to basically the authority that we have to operate under for funding and projects and our urban renewal plan and bylaws action plan. The budget. So as I mentioned, we're doing this high level. So if you have anything you want to talk about, we'll have that now. And then in March will be the actual action where you guys make a recommendation to the agency board. So the agency board and city council will look at their budget timing, and they'll have to have their budget set in place before, around June. So they're ready to continue without any disruption their next fiscal year in July. So that's as far as actions. In March, we'll look at the budget recommendation. And then on the fiscal year side, the first meeting of the fiscal year, typically July, we skip, there's a vacation because it happens around the 4th. So the first meeting of the fiscal year, you'll elect a chair and vice chair. That's what that action is. But I really wanted to get down to the updates. So I've had our January meeting where there was additional update from Eunice on our Salem. And then now we're talking about the calendar year and the budget. We'll have additional budget discussion in March. So given the financial discussion, I thought it might be good to have Seth is listening, and having Seth or Annie come and speak to a lot of the business grant support and PPE support that the city's provided during the COVID situation. So that's something, I'm just throwing it out there. We'll have a discussion on next meeting, but that's something we can talk about. And also, since we talked about how the grant program worked, and I'm making a suggestion, we're talking about funding, capitalizing that program. We have had the grant recipients in the past come out, and they've even conducted tours. It'd be nice to get that again. I don't know, obviously we can't, with the pandemic situation, do tours. Maybe we could do a virtual tour. So I'm talking to the recipients, and we'll see what we can do as far as we can for sure get them on Zoom and update you guys. But it'd be nice to see photos or something so you can get a sense of, what that funding is going toward and how it helps them. So that's kind of my suggestion for the March meeting. And then it just goes on from there. So April, I think this time last year we had ODOT come out and speak to the Wallace project, their paving and ADA accessibility project. So that's something we could have them come out and do an update. And then I'll stop it there. You guys can look at the rest. I'm just throwing out some suggestions on the next meeting. So if there's something missing you want to hear from, let me know and I can update this and we can talk about it in our next meetings.
Along those lines, regarding ODOT for April, did everyone receive the email that came out from the West Salem Business Association regarding ODOT and that whole process and when that's wrapping up in, I think, October of 22? Did everyone get that like 2 days ago? If not,
no.
Michael, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I did not get that email.
Okay. Maybe what I'll do then is I'll forward that to Tori and then he can send that to the group.
Yeah, I have it. I could send it out to you guys.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's helpful. I was pretty happy to see that from Nathan.
Yeah.
Well, with that, it looks like we're kind of, again, maybe a little bit ahead of schedule, which is always good in my mind. We are to the point of the conversation where we're asking for other people, the Edgewater Partnership, West Salem Business Association, anyone who wants to chime in and kind of update the group as to what's going on. And so I'd like to open it up for that.
Yeah, I'll just chime in here. So we're doing our West Salem Business Association golf tournament. Tentative time will be July 23rd of 2021 this year. Well, last year we skipped it over due to COVID, so we're pretty excited about that. We have printed out letters of being a membership from 17, 18, 19 individuals, businesses that didn't reapply. So I am personally visiting those one-on-one. Brittany is on the board, and she helped deliver some. We did a little plant. And so ramping up membership for West Salem Business Association. Yesterday, I had 3 individuals that are going to rejoin. So things are going well in the Zoom world, I guess.
Samantha, what is a membership to the West Salem Business Association cost?
$100 annually.
$100.
$100. So worth it for sure. Very feasible. So
And for that $100, you go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
For those of you that are on this Zoom call that haven't rejoined, I would encourage you to do so. We've had Chief Womack as our guest speaker for January. And so we're really trying to put an effort towards those guest speakers.
If someone is not a member, are they allowed to watch those and join in on those meetings?
Yes, I would say it's just a matter of giving their email address to Nate so they get the invite. So we'll do like a onesie twosie, but after that, it's like, okay, why don't you come on board? So we really try to encourage that.
Perfect.
How many people did you have at the last meeting? That's really good.
We had there was 20 plus, so we had a really good turnout. I was excited about that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, and for those of you again that are on Zoom, thanks for joining. It's all about, I think, the speaker. So really trying to put a focus on that.
Well, you should get Tori for the next one.
I'm not as good. The chief did a good job.
He did do a good job. I agree.
Yeah,
For sure.
and I have done updates. I'm happy to do another one. I don't know about the next one. We can talk.
Okay, I'll reach out to you.
Maybe when we get further down the road with 2nd Street, that would definitely be a huge one. So I'll be in touch.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
Awesome.
And for those of you who've not seen Tori's screensaver, it's not a screensaver, but his profile pic when he is not on video, it's a great look. I would encourage you to log on to see it. And if Tori, feel free to share it right now if you'd like. It's a good look. I think it's a great pic. Good for you. I could not pull. There it is. Holy cow. It's good.
It's
pic.
not really. I was part of a different professional organization, and they were encouraging to have photos up, and I wasn't. Anyway, it's
When
funny.
does your new album drop?
What's that?
When does your new album drop?
Yeah.
Good for you, Tori. Let's see. Anyone from the neighborhood association want to chime in? I have not attended those, and I should be, but I have not. Anybody? Nope.
It's hard because their Monday is at 7, so I always put a reminder on, and then I was like, oh shoot, it's 7:30 or whatever. I'll jump on late occasionally, but
It is crazy because now that they are on Zoom, there's really no reason I shouldn't be able to jump on there. I'm just such a jerk when it comes to certain things. Like at some point, I just need to call it a day. So I need to do better, and perhaps I will this next year. Perhaps. Let's see. Anything for the good of the order? I guess moving on. Our meeting. Oh, yep. Sam, go ahead.
I don't know if we want to table this, but we haven't really talked about the signage on the West Salem coming down. Where are we at on that, or what happened to that?
Tori did give an update probably a month or two back, I want to say, but Tori, go ahead.
sure. So it is a challenging one given the safety, and it's ODOT controlled. So ODOT, I thought it was interesting. Conversation gave me a 10% chance of getting it through. So, and I think we've had the conversation, well, we could still push just the amount of effort we want to apply. I'm hoping to have a little bit more information as we do 2nd Street. I'm going to try and roll in as many opportunity, like, these references to Festival Street or, just community streetscaping and street elements. So it's possible we could identify a location. It just depends on if it's a city right away, or if it's like, if it gets close to Wallace, which is a great opportunity, then we're involved in this ODOT typically. So it's just really balancing, is it private property ownership that we have to acquire to put a signage on, or so I might have more. I think that the approach as you go onto the bridge from Wallace would be ideal, but it's not ideal as far as corralling everything around a project to get something there. It's funny because as I've gone back and forth with ODOT and Public Works, they'll send me pictures of cars and trucks that just blow through that thing. So the conversation has been, well, let's just build it more stout. Then there's additional safety concerns, if they hit something more, it gets to a point where our renewal funds can build the thing, but then somebody else like Public Works or somebody has to maintain it. And then if you have trucks and cars damaging it, it'd just be unfortunate if we put money at something, looked really good maybe for a year or so, and then it's something that we have to coordinate with the state or other agencies to maintain it, to make it looking nice. So it's not through that particular spot, unless you want me to keep fighting for it. I don't see an opportunity there, but we do have other ways potentially. Second Street, maybe we could highlight districts as we look at Edgewater. We do have the blades that we have for wayfinding. It'd be nice to have something a little bit more substantial that identified the different districts. So that's something that we could have as a conversation as we get into the Second Street design. That makes sense.
I'm wondering from an insurance perspective, if someone rolls into that thing and smashes their car into it, would their insurance not participate in the repair and fixing of that?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So if we had like a rock wall or some kind of like a gateway sign in there, to what extent does their insurance have to pay for it? I think that's a valid point.
I'm not looking to push water uphill here, but
Yeah.
It does seem as though that's such a prime area, to Sam's point,
It is.
to be able to build something that looks similar. I think, Sam, you mentioned when you go to Kaiser off of right there at Broadway and whatever that road is. That's a really neat little thing. I know that one's elevated, but I'm wondering if there's something that could be done there, if maybe there's an insurance question. And again, Tori, to your point, I hear you loud and clear that everyone seems to say that that's maybe a 10% chance of success, but looking at this face, you can tell I've gone in for a few fights that I've lost. So I'm open to the conversation.
Well, I'm open to pushing water uphill just because it's such an eyesore, and it's never going to change. It's always going to be an eyesore unless someone pushes or fights for something better. I think all West Salem residents would appreciate that. Anyways.
So what I could do too is I could have, maybe we engage a designer, like an architect or somebody, so we get a concept, and then I could see about pushing it up. I think it's hard, especially when you're talking to engineers. They're not really one to like visualize. If we had something that we could show, maybe as a way of addressing the safety and maybe making it so, stout enough that it's, robust enough that it's not going to get, or it's hard to damage maybe. It could get something, but we're talking, I don't know, to get an architect, I don't know, 10,000, 30,000, something like that, maybe. So just an idea. We could do that. I think it would help. Then we could revisit community members and revisit with ODOT and Public Works around an idea, rather than just right now what they see is just, to Sam's point, eyesore that has cars and trucks constantly going through it.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we commit money to it yet, but it seems like, do we have conversation here? It seems like there's some nodding heads here and there, and
yeah.
Michael, Mark, Brittany, John, Brandon, I see you shaking your head. Looks like John's interested.
All right. I think it'd be kind of neat to, I can get cost estimate. I can bring that back. I think it'd be cool to have, like, how the architectural renderers can do like a neat kind of concept drawing. I think it would help to have something to share to people, because right now it's just me referencing different monument signs in different communities. So we kind of need to have conceptual drawing.
You see how Kaiser or city, I'm assuming Kaiser, was able to push that through, because prior to that rock, welcome to Kaiser sign being, there was a ton of wrecks there. So I know that they had the same problem. So I'd be curious
Okay.
how they were able to get that through.
Okay, I can reach out to Kaiser.
Tori,
we
perhaps you
share-
could get with ODOT again and find out sort of the list of issues so that we can tackle them one by one. I mean, there is the physical stoutness issue of some of vehicles just simply taking out the signage. There are maybe liability issues. You know, if we put a rock monument in there and somebody stacks their car into it and is injured, I don't know what what ODOT's issues may be. But I think the issue goes beyond just building something stout enough. There might also be access issues, given that's a state highway. You know, if there is a large piece of equipment or something that somebody's hauling on a trailer, you know, does that ever come into that play on that tight corner? Just so that we understand what we're up against, I guess is what I'm saying. We know we can build something stout. That's technically feasible, but they may have other issues.
Sure.
And we can't really intelligently go about this since we kind of know what they're going to push back on. That would be helpful for me anyway.
I think we should reference some sort of like Thunderdome, real aggressive spikes and that sort of thing. So tires get blown out before they get there. I don't know, that just throwing that out. Brittany or Michael, did you guys want to chime in at all?
No, I think that's a great idea, Jeff.
Thank you.
I'm all for the Thunderdome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's worth exploring. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Sam, thank you for bringing it back up again.
It hadn't gone away. I'm sorry that I didn't have more to share.
No, good conversation. So as amended, February meeting topics, which is now March meeting topics. Anybody
So I had
else?
mentioned, so we'll have the budget. And then would you like an update on COVID outreach? Is that kind of keep it in the financial kind of theme? Something I can have as a speaker update. And then I'll see if I can bring in one or two grant recipients, maybe 3, and speak to their projects. That works.
Yeah, I like the grant recipient thing, the COVID, to be direct, and I'm not trying to speak for the group, just me, Jeff Miller, really burn out on the COVID thing. I just want to move on.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we need to fill time, obviously, if there's something that can be done and a good discussion, perfect.
Yeah.
Anybody else have something that they would like to add?
Well, I think just as an ongoing topic that was addressed at the last meeting too was just general cleanup around the bridge area. It seems that it just keeps perpetually getting overloaded with trash. You know, is there something that we can get in place to help prevent instead of just constantly going into clean up? It just seems like it hasn't gotten any better, but it's just kind of an ongoing topic, I guess.
So Tori, to that point, is that a conversation with ODOT in addition to the signage into West Salem, since that's an ODOT thing?
Yeah, so it has been an ongoing, I think it's probably recurring on a monthly basis, where they get people in and they clean it out. And then it's almost as soon as it's cleaned out that people are returning. So I think it's a homelessness issue in general. I think city council has been doing more to dedicate, and I just read about the fairgrounds, 100 unit. I just don't know. I mean, it's one of these chicken and egg, like, do you build resources and it solves the problem, or does it augment it by attracting more population? So it just is a broader conversation within the community, you know, because Wallace Marine Park or other parks and overpasses, you know, it is ODOT controlled. So we do have to coordinate with ODOT. And I think it's been something that the city and ODOT have done together, I think on a monthly basis. But I don't know what the final end all will be. Hopefully we can get enough resources where people can have like temporary, you know, housing, counseling, whatever they need to kind of help the situation and move it away from parks and bridges. But I don't know. I wish I had an answer.
Yeah, I certainly don't think that this group needs to jump into that homelessness issue by any stretch. I think Michael was just talking about having consistent cleanup or communication on what that looks like and the efforts. And if this
it is happening, it takes a, you know, I think it takes a special crew for safety and I don't know, the cleanliness of it. And I think my understanding it was happening monthly, but I'll have to check with Public Works to see how often that's happening.
Very good. Michael's that kind of touch on
yeah. I mean, by preventive measure, I was just thinking, you know, restricting access to some of those areas to prevent, you know, people from getting to certain areas that are kind of hotspots for trash. Yeah, I didn't want to tackle the homelessness issue.
Sorry if I went too far down it.
No problem. Yeah, sorry, I just wasn't clear. But yeah, it was just, you know, general update on the upkeep and you know, we're talking about beautification with a new signage, and last thing you want is a new sign to be another dumping spot for you know, garbage and trash. So yeah, I'm good.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, with that, it looks like we have some topics for the March meeting, and unless there's anything for the good of the order, I will quote my good friend Tom Hoffert at the Salem Chamber, which says we are going to be granted with the gift of time about 30 minutes, which is always a good thing on a work day. So unless there's anything else, hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jeff.
Bye, everyone.